So the focus of today's presentation is a piece of work that we have been developing here at Jive called the Candidate Experience Checklist. And I'm just going to spend the first few minutes talking about candidate experience and putting it in context for everybody on the call. So, I think the first thing, the top level way to start this is, I think everybody gets that we spend all of our time online, right? Some of the research out there says most people are spending 5 or 6 hours a day online, and about 50% of that time is spent on mobile devices. And I think that, there's a whole breed of consumer-oriented internet services companies, and I splashed the logos on the screen here just to represent a few of those, and they really are setting a new bar for what the user experiences are like when you use those services. Everything about the Amazon experience is built to optimize the way that people buy things online. And everything about the Apple experience has been built to make it really easy for me to consume media on my devices. And same thing for Netflix, is to watch television or movies. And, one of the things I want you to ask yourself is, have you optimized and really thought through what the user experience is for the business objective that you are trying to achieve as a talent acquisition professional, right? Have you optimized your processes? Have you optimized your site to really make it easy for candidates to apply for jobs and to find work in your organizations? And I think you have to ask yourself that question with the backdrop of, the user experience expectations now for people is quite high. I think, there's a generation of consumers out there who have grown up with the internet, and they experience these amazing applications and services and software every single day. I tell people the story a lot that when I go to pay my American Express bill, they've built a service online which makes it really easy for me to do, and I can do it from my mobile device, and I can do it from my web, on my browser. And they've built an experience which actually makes it fun for me, or at least somewhat enjoyable for me to pay that bill. And those are where the expectations are for most of the things that we're doing online. They are that it's going to be an awesome, integrated, optimized experience that is finely tuned to the thing that I'm trying to achieve at that given time. And just for a lot of the clients that we work with and a lot of the career sites that we touch as an organization here at Jive, it sometimes feels like those sites are frozen in time. And frozen in time in an era before the iPhone, right? I felt like in 2006 and 2007 when the iPhone was first kind of released on the world, it really changed everything about the way we thought about usability and how simple and obvious a lot of the online services could be out there for us. And, what we're finding is that for a lot of folks who are using career sites today, the people that you want to convert from job seekers to job candidates, we're giving them bad design and bad user experience. And, that can be described more as confusing navigation. It's not obvious what you want them to do when they get to the sites. One of the things that drives me crazy is I see folks who have allowed there to be a change in brand or a change in some of the branding on the site in the middle of a business process. It feels like it's one of the only places on the internet where that's still allowed. But I think the biggest issue there is clumsy software. And what I mean by that, I think it's a catch-all for software that doesn't work on a mobile device, software that doesn't work potentially on the computer that I happen to be using. It's just a bad user experience all around, and I think bad candidate experience with poor design, confusing navigation, no brand consistency, clumsy software is a really big deal. There was some recent research that was put out by the folks at Burson, who again are doing a tremendous job in documenting a lot of relevant statistics for our industry. They came out with some research just recently in the Talent Acquisition Factbook that said that career sites and company websites are driving more hires than any other source today, and that 1 in 5 hires are coming directly attributed to career sites. Now, that's interesting in that it's the largest, but I think what is even more impactful is that it is really the only large driver of hires that is increasing in size in the sample time that Bersin did this from 2011 to 2014, right? So it's a really important source of hires, and it's growing, and this lack of candidate experience or a poor candidate experience on the web for a set of consumers who's finely tuned to expect really awesome user experiences is the root cause for time to fill not being what it should be. The frustration that potential hiring managers are showing inside of the organization, either to you or your organization. You know, sometimes we talk a lot about, do we have enough candidates for these jobs, but are we not getting the candidates, the right candidates? Is there a quality metric that we're not hitting with the candidates that we're drawing? And really, external perception of your organization can be driven by the candidate experience that potential job seekers are having on your sites today, right? And so the website, the career site is really important, and it's, I think that the challenge that I think many folks feel is that the ATS, the applicant tracking system, is at the core of much of the recruiting infrastructure and talent acquisition infrastructure in most organizations. And, you know, right there in the name, tracking system, just really says it all, because an ATS is designed as a system of record. It is designed as a database and a set of workflows to help you track candidates once they've already entered into your world. And, you know, there is a certain design pattern that goes into that. There's a certain DNA, there's a certain set of thoughts that people start with when they're building an applicant tracking system that makes it really, really good back office software to track candidates. And I think that what we're seeing is with all of the social media services that are being built today, and all of the media services and all the way that we look at information on the web, on our mobile devices, there's a different way to think about systems. And that way to think about your systems is as a systems of engagement. Systems that were designed to pull people into your world and have them engage with you and have them execute very, very specific tasks that are going to be meaningful to you and your organization. And in the context of a career site, that activity that we want to drive is people wanting to work for our organizations, people wanting to apply for the open requisitions that we have in our world. And, you know, if you're not thinking about your career site as a system of engagement, there's going to be some challenges in general. And this is why I think where everybody's objectives should be headed is in marrying these two thoughts together, right? The notion of the expectation of the job seeker who expects a consumer-level experience and building a system of engagement that promotes the prescribed activity, which is people wanting to work for your organization. And I think if you put those two principles together, you know, fundamentally what you're left with is what I call a consumer-level candidate experience, a candidate experience that looks and feels and operates like a consumer web service. And I think if you can achieve that, I think what you'll end up with is, you know, a lot more people applying the jobs and a lot happier organization in general. And so this is basically, you know, our life's work here at Jive. This is the thing that we're completely committed to, and we wake up every day thinking about how can we create a consumer-level candidate experience for every single time that a potential job seeker touches your brand. So, you know, we work with some of the biggest companies in the world. You can go to our website and see kind of who those companies are. And so in our work with those companies and in the best practices that we have built up over the last few years, we have documented some of this. And this documentation is called the Candidate Experience Checklist. And it's got 9 different pieces to it, and I'm going to take everybody through it now. A little bit later on in the presentation, I will share the URL where everybody can go and get this today. But this basically is a summary view of all of the research and all of the work and all of the best practices that Jibe has been accumulating and focused on, for the last few years as a company. So I'm going to jump in. There's only 9 of them. The first one is the idea of sleek, responsive web design. It's really important for us to think about, that front door to our career sites as more than just supporting mobile, right? The best practices today are where the experience is fundamentally the same on a desktop computer and on a mobile device, and that best practices also show that the organizations today are building one site, and this is a responsive site that understands what kind of device the user is visiting the site on. And so if it is a desktop computer and we can make the assumption that it has a potentially higher, faster web connection, we would serve up some certain graphics to the site and a certain menu and navigational structure. If they're coming in on a mobile device, then we would, yes, refactor that screen to fit on a smaller device size of a mobile device, but also potentially alter the way the site behaves to be optimized to achieve the objectives of the site on a mobile device, so the connection speed, the screen size, etc. So, and it isn't about just having an M site. I mean, a few years ago, folks started actually kind of thinking, well, I'll just build a little M site and I'll redirect all my traffic from mobile over to that M site. And, that's really not anything that the folks here at Jibe or any of the customers that we work with would ever prescribe you to do. It's really about having one site that understands whether it's a mobile user or a desktop user and adheres itself to whatever that might be. So really important for us to think about responsive web design as kind of where the best practices are today. And now that I've got a responsive site that treats everybody as a first-class citizen, whether I come in on a mobile device or on a desktop computer, we have been trained for the last 10 to 15 years to think in terms of search. Search is the guiding navigational principle which we all as consumers in a consumer-level candidate experience would think of first as a way to find things that I would be interested in on the site. And if I'm in a job search and I'm a job seeker, then I'm going to look for jobs and I want to be able to go to your site and look for jobs. And this is, I think, one of the areas where people and career sites in general have really not risen to the level of what consumers typically would experience. And yes, it's about putting search from a design and branding perspective front and center in the user experience for the candidate, but it's also about creating those search capabilities which we all have grown very accustomed to using in the consumer search world. So I can search in the language that I am speaking or I'm reading, and I can search by location, or I can do filtered searches based on a wide degree of criteria, but I can finely tune my search to find the right job for me. So really thinking through search in an advanced way, because that is a design metaphor that people today feel very connected to when they navigate through a consumer website. So number 3 is the notion of a seamless supply flow. So, many of the consumer-oriented sites that I've been talking about today have really thought through what is the actual thing, what is that action that I want people to actually do on my site. So if it's I want them to buy what they're looking for, then I'm going to make them the ability to complete that transaction to be really seamless and really simple. And everything on the site is built towards that. And I think when you build a career site and when you are building this as a way, as a front door to highlight your employee brand, to talk about, and entice people to come in and want to work for your organization, the apply flow is the way that you close that transaction with the user who visits your site. And you need to really think about how you can make that as seamless as possible. Jive has hosted a few million job applications for some of the biggest companies in the world, and one of the most obvious data point correlations that we've seen with our client base is that the shorter the apply flow, the higher the application completion ratio. So the shorter the apply flow, the more people will complete a particular job application. And that's almost a linear correlation. If you were to plot all of Jive's customers on a graph, you would see a linear correlation that shows that. So it's about making that process really short, but it's also about making it doable from a mobile device. And I think that, we see with our customers that 3/4 of the job seekers out there are doing parts of their search on a mobile device. Most of those people would like to be able to do the whole end-to-end process on a mobile device. So yes, it's about a simple design that takes people down a path where they can successfully complete a job application. It's about making sure that I support that job application on whatever platform the user potentially is on, and making that a simple and obvious process for me to complete that transaction. A lot of the work that we do is not worth it unless we can get people to complete those job applications. And, I think that the next point in the checklist that everybody can start to think about is, and benchmark your own organization against, is how much are we leveraging a potential job seeker's social network? We, as a society now, are connected in so many different ways on an ongoing basis, whether it be the photos that we take, the jobs that we've had, the people that we know. We share that information. We share that information in relative real time, and we have different degrees of social networks that we follow and we participate in, yet we're not leveraging any of that really in the candidate experience. So isn't there a way that we as job seekers could potentially leverage that social network to position ourselves better to break through the candidates that people are bringing into an organization? And isn't the people that I know, whether they work at your organization or another organization, aren't they part of who I am, and don't you want to know who a full picture of the candidate? So connecting social networking, which is a pervasive part of every job seeker's existence today, with the referral process, and bringing those things together can give you as a talent acquisition team a much better view of the potential candidates that you're bringing in and finding those candidates who are going to be the best fit from a quality perspective for your organization. Right? So the socially connected referral network, we think, is a really critical one, and I think one that will continue to grow in importance over time as social networking continues to be even more pervasive into the organizations that people's lives. And in many ways, the next few things that I wanted to talk about in the checklist are about really turning over some control over to the user. I think one of the common shared traits of all of the great consumer services that are on the internet today, one of them is the ability to turn control over to the user about how they interact with you as an online entity. You search for a job on a career site, and there's no job available. I now have to figure out a way to get that visitor to come back to my site, right? If we think about the last 25 years in the industry, right, posting job ads with an apply to this job call to action has been the pervasive model. But I think a lot of that is changing, right? And what we see now is the beginnings of the next way that people will be connected, job seeker to job opportunity, right? And that is highlighting who they are, sharing their background, their skills, their education, their work history, their profile, not for a particular job, but just to share it with your organization and your company. And then you as a talent acquisition team can use machine learning or search capabilities or any of the other automated technologies that are now available to figure out which of these candidates would be good and matched up for the particular job. So we see more and more organizations adopting what we're calling integrated talent networks, where job seekers say, hey, this is who I am, these are my skills, this is my work history, this is what I've done. If you have a job that I would particularly be interested in, then here I'm making myself available to you. And I think as the internet marketing model continues to be more pervasive and grow in importance to the overall notion and nature of talent acquisition, integrated talent networks are going to be a really important model. They're the opt-in model for clients to come to you and say, hey, I want to work for your organization, here's who I am, match me up with a job. And I think it works really well, especially for passive candidates. And again, continuing on with the theme and the idea of giving the user some control over how you as an organization communicates with them, notifications are a hugely important part of this world. You know, one of the things that, notifications and job alerts have been something that have been done in the industry for many, many years, and job alerts have been one of the most successful drivers of sources of hire for many, many years. And I think this has become an integrated part of a lot of people's world. But I think what's more interesting now is, and when we think about it from a candidate experience perspective, is how can I integrate that directly into the experience that a candidate has on my site? So if I search for a particular job on my site and I find some jobs or I don't find particular jobs, maybe I just want to say, this is the kind of job that I want, and I'm going to sign up for job alerts about that, right? So it isn't just about saying, here's my email address, send me unsolicited emails. It's about, this is the type of job that I'm really interested in, and therefore I'm signing up for be notified about that, those types of jobs. And I think what's even more powerful when you look at it from the talent acquisition and recruiting side is, once you've got somebody to come to your site, getting them to sign up for job alerts and notifications is a relatively low bar from a sharing of personal information. I haven't applied for a job, but you don't know anything about me just yet. But it extends that relationship now with that passive candidate, that visitor to your site, forever. Right? They're going to continue to get email notifications about jobs that fit their model and what they're looking for forever until they opt out of the relationship. Right? And it is by far one of the most powerful ways to extend your investments over a length of time, so that an investment that you've made today to get somebody to visit your site, could be a job ad, could be a career fair, could be any of the other things that we're doing, job notifications extend that investment until you actually have a candidate that actually makes sense. So notifications are a key part of candidate experience, and they're a really powerful idea for talent acquisition teams to actually master and do really, really well to build that candidate pipeline. Next, I want to talk a little bit about search engine optimization. So search engine optimization is a pretty arcane term. What it means fundamentally is two things, right? One is that your career site shows up well in the Google rankings. And so if somebody types jobs at Jive, we want to make sure that that's the top level answer that Google's going to return. That's one. In many instances, though, organizations the native jobs themselves are falling below where the aggregators are. So the aggregators and some of the folks that are out there are aggregating all of these jobs, and they're really good at SEO, and they're actually rising above where your organization may end up in Google's algorithm. So what we're doing, and one of the ways that we help clients is we help them and provide them with the technology that's going to allow them to make sure that they can put the right information into their sites so that they do well in the Google rankings and they show up above the aggregators. But I want to say one more thing, I think, which is even more interesting and more important, which is the Google algorithm is not fixed in concrete, right? It is a moving river, and the technology that we provided to our clients is one that allows them the flexibility to continue to adapt to an ever-changing algorithm, and making sure that no matter what happens and whatever becomes the best practices for optimizing web pages, that these sites will continue to do well. I know you all must be huge fans of the Jive blog. It's amazing. The most popular blog post that we've done over the last few months was a post about something called Mobilegeddon. You may have read it. You may have read it from some other folks. A bunch of folks copied our blog post and wrote their own articles. But Google changed their algorithm recently, and what it was that if your site didn't support mobile really well, that therefore your site would be deprecated in the Google algorithm itself, and you would show up lower in the rankings. And I think what was more interesting, the fact that than it was actually happening, was it really highlighted the fact that how the algorithm changes and how you need to have the technology in place that allows you to continually update your site to maintain some top positions over time, because it isn't ever, again, fixed in time. It's always a bit of a moving target. So SEO is a really big deal. A lot of the clients that we work with really focus their SEO activity around landing pages for categories of jobs. So marketing jobs, sales jobs, engineering jobs, and they all have their own landing pages. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I would definitely categorize this under pet peeve of mine, but brand is really important, right? Brand is important to every organization, big or small. And your brand is your credibility, it's who you are, it's your identity. And it shocks me. It shocks me to no end that organizations have allowed potentially their ATS vendor or some other system vendor to represent their brand in the middle of a process. And I've seen this, I think we've all seen this. There's a nice glossy career site, you find the job you want to apply for, you click apply, and then you see a completely different branded experience when I click the apply. And it is amazing to me that at the most critical juncture that we've spent all of this energy and dollars to drive this potential job candidate to my site, to the job that they want, and then at the critical moment when I can complete the transaction and convert them from a job seeker into a job candidate, I change the branding on them completely. It's as if at the checkout process, Amazon site was branded for Visa. Right, and it's just not the way it is, right? It's an Amazon-branded process through the entire process. So, really, yes, we want to have great employee branding. And I think employee branding is a hugely important topic and a topic unto itself that we could spend an hour talking about. But as far as candidate experience and our checklist for best practices in a candidate experience world, a consistency from the brand from the moment that visitor hits your site all the way through, I think is not too much to ask. I think it's something that we should all be striving for. And the last piece here is, how do I measure all of this, right? And from a candidate experience perspective, one of the critical pieces here is really going to be adopting some level of analytics. And it's analytics about who's coming to your site and why, and where they're coming from and the sources that are generating the most traffic and the sources that are generating the most quality traffic, which could be job candidates that have applied and hires, but also demographics. Where are they coming from? Location data, what kinds of devices are they using? All of this information is going to help you as an organization make better decisions about what your candidate experience could be or should be. And all the clients that we work with, recruiting analytics is a really big part of that. So it definitely is important. So those are the 9 pieces of the candidate experience checklist. The checklist itself is going to be downloadable. I'm going to share a little bit in where you can get that. But I really do want you to ask yourself right now, when you look at those 9 items that I just went through and gave you guys some ideas about how to think about them, I would hope that you would ask yourself right now, what is the candidate experience that I'm providing to my users on my site today? Does it work on mobile? Have I consistently extended my brand through every touch point? Am I using analytics? Have I optimized the site to close the deal with potential job seekers and around the apply flow? Have I allowed people to think about customizing the experience itself? And am I really providing the type of candidate experience that consumers in our consumer lives we all expect and we think is kind of the minimums? And I just wanted to spend a few last minutes here talking about why this is so important to provide a consumer-level candidate experience. Time to fill is harder than ever, right? 53 days, 52 and a half days on average. Some tougher to fill jobs are taking 70 days. The war on talent is real, and I think you guys feel this battlefront every single day, but longer time frames to fill vacant positions is a reality. And candidate experience can really help drive this. I come back to this slide, and I come back to this chart that we got, again, from the Burson guys. So thank you very much to them. This is your #1 source of hire. 1 in 5 are coming through your career site. What does it do to your talent pool? What does it do to your candidate pool if it's 2 in 5? Or that increase the conversion rates on the site? It's a huge, huge factor, right? And the career site is growing in relevance to the candidate pool. Over the last 3 years, it's gone from 13% to nearly 20%. So really, really important. And it isn't just about the number of candidates. I hear all the time that one of the key factors that people want to talk about is the quality of the candidates who are coming to the site. And what was really interesting to me was that the more candidates you are driving through your website, the more proactive you are in your recruiting, the larger your candidate pool is, the more selective you can be in your hiring, and therefore, the lower your turnover rate. So some attention to detail, some focus in this particular area of recruiting, right, have lower new hire turnovers than less mature organizations. And each percentage point drop in turnover could mean worth millions depending on the volume that you're hiring in. So really thinking about the candidates, what their experience is, more of them, providing a great user experience on the channel that's going to provide the most hires and drive the most, and drive the best, lowest turnover ratios as well. So that's why this is our life's work here. The entire team here at Jive is completely focused on this issue, enabling your candidates to enjoy a consumer user experience every single time they interact with your brand. And that means from the way the sites are built, to the way that they're branded, to the way people search for jobs, to the way they apply for jobs, to how they get notified about potential openings, or how they just express interest in working with your organization on any device. And most importantly, integrated on top of your ATS, right? So the ATS is that system of record. We can be that system of engagement that sits on top of that workflow system. And I think a really good way to start to think about this, a really good first step for everybody who's on the call today, would be to go ahead and download the candidate experience checklist. A lot more details in the checklist than will be provided here today. You can download it at jive.com/checklist. Over the next couple of days, you're going to get an email from us where you can actually download this directly, and there'll be a recording to this presentation. I apologize for my technical snafus at the very beginning of the presentation, but I'm going to go ahead and take some questions, and you can feel free to go ahead and I see more questions than usual, which is great. So I'm just going to jump in here and start answering the questions. You know, which of these 9 elements is the most important? That's a great question. You know, I would say first and foremost would be analytics. It's weird, maybe the last one. I don't think you can improve unless you measure it, and starting to measure some of these things would be a great first step. So my favorite, I think the one that I tell clients all the time is start to measure that first, and then figure out where your baseline is. And then once you do that, you know, you can start to make incremental improvements and see how the metrics improve. So definitely analytics would be the one that I think is the most important. What kind of results have you seen when your customers have implemented a consumer-level experience? It's a great question. You know, first off, all the work that we do with Jive customers is confidential, so we don't share any specifics about improvements. What I would say, though, is one of the key metrics that we track with our clients is application conversion rates. What percentage of people that are starting an online job application are actually completing an online job application? You know, interestingly enough, the baseline when clients start to work with Jive, it typically is 10 to 15% is where the baseline is. That means only 1 in 10, 1 in 8 people who start an application are actually completing it. And typical Jive clients are seeing 2 to 3 times that many people complete their online job applications. The conversion there is that they're getting more candidates at a lower cost envelope, really. But that's kind of where people are today, right? They're building larger candidate pools at lower cost models by actually completing more online job applications as a percentage of those are started. We've got some unbelievable clients, and they are reached out, and they're actually now, you know, above 75% from an application conversion ratio. So 3/4 of the people who are actually starting those companies' jobs applications are actually completing them. So that's those are all, I think, pretty good metrics to share with. But reach out. We've got a lot of stuff we can share in private to talk about as far as benchmarking goes. And but you know, here with everybody listening in, we have a difficult time kind of sharing any specifics about that. So why do you think these career sites are so far behind is the next question. Really good question. You know, I think that it goes back to that whole idea of system of engagement versus system of record and how are you designing your software. You know, I think there's a whole generation of companies now, and Jive is included in that, who grew up as systems of engagement, and we build our online services to thrill and make people enjoy the experience, and they're built specifically to get people through the career site to the job and get them to apply for those jobs. And you know, for many of you, I think that the reason that the career sites are so far behind is that you've offloaded a little bit of that work over to the ATS, and those ATSs are really just built as an app, as a system of record, and that's not what they were designed to do. What about assessments in the application process? Great question, love it. Yeah, so almost every single client that we work with has either started out because they had assessments right from the very beginning or have quickly adopted assessment. It's interesting, I'll spend a moment here. A lot of the clients that we work with start out not having assessments, and then we increase their candidate pool, and they quickly move to online assessments because they want to take the numbers back down again. So what's really great is most of the assessment vendors today are adopting to the Jive model, which is systems of engagement, open systems, web APIs that allow us to seamlessly plug those assessment applications into into our apply flow. So most of our clients already do. They're really great, and we work with those vendors to make sure that happens. So I got a request here to show a particular statistic again. I'm going to show that here. So there you go. This actually shows kind of how organizations that are proactive in their recruiting and how that reduces the amount of 12-month new hire turnover. Do you have any of the best practices in encouraging referrals through social networks? Yeah, so yes, and the best results that we've seen are really inverting the normal referral model. So where we've seen a lot of success with clients is I apply for a job at your organization, and typically I would tap people in my social network and say, hey, you can be a referral for me for this job. What we've done is we've inverted that. So we've saying, who works inside of this organization today and is in my social network? And that would be the best referral. So we basically allow the user on the site to scan through their social profile and say, these people work at company X that I'm applying to, would you be a referral for this job? Inverting that model to not just be the broad pool of people in my social network, but to narrowly define it as the people in my social network that work at my target company that I want to work at, that has been a really productive combination for the clients that we have who are doing that together. So I've got time for one more. I'm going to take this one. So thank you for all your questions. Excuse me. What kind of metrics do you look at to know if you have a good candidate experience? Yeah, great question. A couple of things, right? One is I definitely suggest that you be doing surveys, and Net Promoter Scores are really, really good, positive ways to overall, and I think the Candies organization would probably prescribe to that if you don't know what the Candies are. They're an organization that's dedicated to highlighting those organizations that are doing a really good job on candidate experience, and Jerry Crispin and Elaine Orla run that organization. They do a tremendous, tremendous job. I suggest that you go to candies.org to take a look at that. But there they will tell you that Net Promoter Scores are a really big deal. What that means is surveys for candidates, and would they recommend that process that they just went through to another person that they know, whether they got the job or not. And that's really the good way to think about it, right? I've applied for a job, I didn't get the job, but was the process so pleasant, so consumer-oriented in its nature that I would recommend this process to other folks even though I didn't get the job. And that's a really, really good way to think about candidate experience today. So I'm going to cruise back here, and thank you for staying with me today. www.jive.com/checklist. It's now live. You can go ahead and you can download the checklist that you see here. It's a really ebook. You can share that across your organization. Over the next couple of days, we will be sharing this information and the recording with everybody. I really appreciate everybody showing up today. I hope you learned something, and I apologize for the technical snafu at the beginning of the presentation. So have a nice day, everybody. Enjoy.